All right, we are back here on the podcast, getting ready to preview the upcoming college football season. Join me today to break it all down. It's becoming an annual tradition here. The great Bill Bender from the Sporting News, great friend of the podcast. Bill, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, once again, thanks for coming on here. And obviously, a lot of changes in the sport between last year and this year. And the biggest to me seems like we now have this 12-team playoff coming in this year. And we've come from the days of 4 teams, and now we have 12. So what's your take on how this is going to impact college football now we have this 12-team plus going to stretch the postseason out for a few weeks?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's going to make the season longer. There's some pros to it, no doubt. I mean, more teams are going to be involved in the playoffs. We get playoff games on campus. That will be exciting. And just more inclusion, I suppose. I mean, the drawback is obvious. It's, the regular season is not going to be the same. Anybody that thinks it is fooling themselves. Those rivalry games that are winner take all, or winner maybe take 2, or winner have to take a third game if they play a third time. So I don't know. I'm mixed. I have mixed feelings about it. I'm excited about the upcoming season. I always am. But like I said, if we think we're not doing something that's closer to the NFL model, that's not where it's headed. That's where it is.
Yeah, it definitely is where it is here. I will say, I know we haven't had this before, but the idea of playoff games on campuses in late December is going to be a lot of fun. I think that's definitely the highlight of the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest part. We get to see these things that we talk about, LSU going to Iowa in November, Tennessee hosting Michigan, things like that. Now, the thing with this is I'm wondering, and this topic of discussion, is that going to impact September games? If you're playing a 9-game conference schedule and you're playing, you got to win 3 or 4 playoff games, are you going to schedule down September, kind of do what the NFL does and treat those first couple games like your preseason? I can see that. And we could have less blockbuster matchups. I mean, and that's reflected in week 1 in some ways. That you look at this week 1, it's good. I mean, you got Georgia and Clemson and Notre Dame and A&M and LSU, USC, but it's not, oh my gosh, blockbuster good. I would make that contention.
Yeah, that's for sure. Get back to that in a minute here. The other thing, I think, in addition to this here, you mentioned it also, the realignment that we've had teased the last few years, the moves have been made, now they're finally in place. Now we have these 4 super conferences. We have the 18-team ACC and Big Ten. We have 16 teams in the SEC and the Big 12 here. So this feels like very, very bloated seeing these leagues, and it's very odd knowing you're in a conference with somebody, and you might not see some teams in your league for 2 years, theoretically, depending on how the schedule rotation goes.
Right. And, well, yeah, I think most teams will see them every other year for now. But to your point, yeah, the protected rivalries are a little bit different. There's no division, which is a good idea in theory. You get your top 2 teams in the conference championship game. I think the only problem with it is there could be some quirky tiebreakers. The schedules, you just said it, the schedules are imbalanced. How do you differentiate between Rutgers' schedule and Penn State and Michigan's if they're all tied? I think it's going to lead to some really messy situations, especially in the SEC and Big Ten, because certain teams aren't going to play other teams. It was already getting there. Now it's worse.
Yeah, it's definitely more skewed here. It's just crazy to think about here when you look at a situation, potentially especially those 4 teams out in the West Coast in the Pac-12 now, and thinking you're maybe you could play each other more. Maybe Ohio State comes out once every 4 years, which doesn't really feel like the true spirit of conference games.
No, and I'm wondering how that will. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think there's definitely going to be a lot of consequences. They'll still be big games and those kind of things. But I was saying earlier, Oregon, Ohio State, huge game on October 12th. They're the top 2 teams in the Big Ten. So what's stopping them from playing in the Big Ten championship game? Then, you could play them in a quarterfinal, depending on how the playoff is set up. So those are things to think about. Now, that's another situation where I think the college football playoff will more than likely, they won't say it, but they can take some liberties and move some seeding around so we don't get rematches and 3 matches. But we'll see. I think that's a to be determined for me.
Yeah, for sure here. And we'll start the reigning national champs. You're going to specific teams here at Michigan. And obviously, they win the title. They lose their coach. Jim Harbaugh goes off to the Chargers. You see J.J. McCarthy goes pro. He's now a member of the Vikings. So how is Michigan looking here trying to defend the title?
They lost a lot of guys. So they definitely, anytime you lose 13 guys in the NFL, you may take a step back on the field. I mean, that's what happened with LSU in 2019. They had one of the best football teams of all time that year. Harbaugh, that's easy to say you're going to keep your culture the same. I mean, Sharon Moore will face the challenge that not having Harbaugh around. So, and not to mention their schedule's brutal. So I think they could take a small step back. I don't think it's the step back that a lot of people think, just because they have enough talent back on the defense, back on the offense. If Orgy or Jack Tuttle fills that void at quarterback, they're still going to be very competitive in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I would expect them to certainly be in the mix for a playoff spot here. Another team with a big coaching change, Alabama. Obviously, Nick Saban retires now. He is off doing his own thing now. He's working at ESPN, doing some commentary on TV. So how does Alabama do in the first year in the post-Saban era?
Same speech. I mean, they got plenty of talent back. There's no question. I think Kalen DeBoer and this team's probably being undervalued a little bit. Remember, they won the SEC championship. Jalen Milroe's back. He was among the leaders in the country in passer efficiency. They have a lot of talent. They're going to be good. For Kalen DeBoer, the challenge is how do you live up to Nick Saban on a year-to-year basis, and how is that done? And I don't think it will be easy. Their schedule gets tough later in the year. They go to Oklahoma. They go to LSU. They go to Tennessee. Those are all tough matchups. So I think those are the things to keep in mind with Alabama. It's not about being Nick Saban. That if you start with that, you're always going to fail. I think it's about being Alabama in year one, and you'll probably hear Kalen say similar things.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's go into the big conferences here, some of the headlines to watch with these polls here, because obviously we have a coaches poll out right now. We don't have the AP as of recording time here, but I do think we'll start with the SEC, which obviously has the coaches number one preseason in Georgia. You have Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, all inside the top 10 there. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the SEC. Like, what do you think is the storyline watch for that conference this year?
How many teams they get in the playoffs? I mean, it really starts there. Do they get 4? How does this new 16-team conference work? I mean, I think they have the most playoff contenders in there, but which one will get left out? I mean, the big storyline is Texas and Oklahoma. You get to trot them around. That's 2 top 10 all-time brands, and you get to put them in the spotlight, put that SEC patch on their chest, and they'll take advantage of that. Their ratings will be huge. So, yeah, and then curious to see what Georgia does. That's a program that's 42-2 the last 3 years, but all we've been talking about is player arrest. So, I think Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas, Tennessee, LSU, Texas A&M. Did I miss anybody? All of those teams are playoff. Oklahoma, there's 8. So when half of your league is playoff caliber, the football should be pretty good.
Yeah, I think
Missouri. I forgot Missouri too. There's 9.
Yeah, Missouri, LSU too in that top 12. That's crazy. They have like half the top 12 teams, the SEC.
Yeah, and that's going to make the games riveting. And now you can lose one. Like I said, that's another thing where the tenor of your season changes a little bit. Most playoff teams, no playoff team in the last 10 years had 2 losses. That's another thing that I think we're undervaluing is the 2-loss factor, that a lot of teams with 2 losses are going to make the college football playoff. So I think that's exciting. And we'll see more of that.
Yeah, let's go to the other big monster right now, which is the Big Ten. Obviously, they welcome in the 4 Pac-12 schools in the conference. Oregon is jostling Ohio State in terms of being high up in the preseason poll. We got Michigan we talked about earlier here. You got a lot of the big boys trying to make noise here. Like, do you think this is a 3-bid Big Ten? Do you think more teams can try and shoehorn in here?
At least 3. I mean, I think Penn State, Michigan. I would have Michigan in 3rd. I still think the talent's there, as I outlined earlier. Penn State will still be in the mix. Ohio State, Oregon, There are several teams like that. So I think, and then behind that, Iowa and Rutgers. It's the same thing with the schedule imbalance. Now, a couple weeks ago, when Kirk Herbstreit said Rutgers is a Big Ten sleeper, people were probably like, what? But you look at their schedule, you look what they have coming back, you look at the improvements that Greg Schiano has made, makes a little bit of sense. So, I mean, those are the things you got to watch out for.
Yeah, and as somebody who's in the New York tri-state area here, like Rutgers being mentioned as a potential playoff team in the Big Ten in football is something that's very inconceivable over here.
Well, I mean, Iowa might seem the same way, and Iowa's offense should be better. New offensive coordinator, Luke Lachey is healthy, Cade McNamara is healthy. Their defense is going to be stout as usual. So, again, I guess, and I think you're in agreement with me here, the schedules it's not being talked about enough to me, because when people see Rutgers in November, let's say Rutgers is 8-1 for the purpose of the exercise, and people are going to complain and be very loud, and they're going to be under the microscope. But that is what happens when you have a 18-team league where Rutgers, I mean, to their credit, the best thing for them is, hey, Ohio State and Michigan aren't on the schedule anymore. We get beat down by them for a decade. Remember the years where they play them back-to-back, too. So, I think that's the most interesting part of maybe on the field for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that here. We also go to the ACC now, obviously. We got Florida State appears to be the top dog here. Clemson's lurking. They have, I feel like their teams are sort of, coming in under the radar a little bit as they bring in teams from the Pac-12 and SMU, which aren't adding much to the football brand here. But I do think, it's interesting to see that this is a league that's had a lot of turmoil with teams reportedly trying to get out. So it's interesting to see how the ACC does this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. The SMU, and that's weird. That's going to be. I was typing up our ACC preview this week, and just the surrealism of the moment when SMU makes its ACC debut, and they're going to have Florida State come in there to Dallas. And I'm just going to be like, what is going on? But it'll be an ACC game. Cal and Stanford, they've stretched the entire conference coast to coast. That's really cool in some ways. And then others, you're just going to have to get through. I don't think Cal and Stanford are going to be very competitive this year in that conference. I think at the top, you have Florida State, Clemson, NC State, and Miami should be pretty good. And, from there, it's kind of like throwing darts. Virginia Tech, I've seen a lot of good things written about Virginia Tech. They got to get out on the field and do it. North Carolina, they have the nation's best running back, arguably, in Amarian Hampton. Got to be more consistent on the defensive end. So those teams after the top four have a ton of questions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also the intriguing league to get the Big Four leagues is the Big 12, because this is a league for the past 5 years. So it's basically ruled by Oklahoma or Texas or the top dogs here, and now they're gone. So it opens up a sort of a vacuum at the top of the league for somebody to rise up here and make themselves a name nationally here. Who do you think are the favorites to watch in the Big 12 this year?
Well, the Big 12 is wide open. There is no favorite. That's what makes it so intriguing. Is I could come up many playoff contenders as the SEC has. Is there's teams that are capable of winning the Big 12. You go all the way down to West Virginia, both Kansas schools, Kansas and Kansas State. Oklahoma State, Utah's picked to win it. Arizona should be good. They're 6. And the thing a lot of these teams share is the quarterback play should be more than fun. Jalen Daniels, Avery Johnson, Rising's back, Alan Bowman's back. Those guys have played near a decade. Garrett Green and Noah Fafita. And that's not even getting to Colorado and Shedeur Sanders and what they may bring to this conference. So I think it's going to be outstanding football. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I don't know that any of those schools will make a national championship run, but I do know they'll all compete and be very fun to watch during the regular season.
Yeah, where do you feel like Notre Dame sits this year with where they are I was in the coaches poll, the number 7. I look at their schedule right now. It's the usual mix of ACC teams. They have their annual games here. I feel like it's not the toughest schedule they've ever put together here, but I think with the way this new setup is here, I think Notre Dame's pretty well set up.
I think they're this year's Michigan in some ways. I really do. If Riley Leonard stays healthy and is who I think he could be, they could make a run and possibly win the national title. And that hasn't been I don't say that lightly because I've been around Notre Dame my whole life. I went to a Catholic school. I know what Notre Dame hype is. It's every year. But with that schedule now, that said, they got to play at Texas A&M in the opener. That's a tough one. And they have Florida State on the schedule. They have USC and Louisville. So I think they can get to 10 wins. And if they get to 10 wins, for them, it's definitely you'll be in the playoff. You'll probably be a 5 or a 6 seed, and you go from there.
Yep. Let's go on here. A couple of things here. Besides Rutgers, who are some sleeper teams you're watching this year?
I mentioned the two Kansas schools. Both quarterback, they're set, exciting program, successful coaches at the FCS level that have kind of taken that model and run with it. And it takes time at Kansas and Kansas State, So they're interesting. I think Nebraska is interesting in the Big Ten. Finally got a quarterback. Matt Rule has said and done all the right things on the recruiting trail. They could be pretty good this year. Trying to take one of each conference. SEC, Tennessee, not a sleeper so much, but not being mentioned in the playoff discussions. But if Nico Iamaleava is who I think he'll be, they'll be back up to 40 points per game again and very dangerous. And then that leaves, what conference did I not give you? ACC sleeper, I think NC State. Not a sleeper, but maybe they break through. Grayson McCall's played a ton of football. Their defense, they're going to be good up front on both sides. They beat Clemson 2 of the last 3 and have shown they can compete with Florida State. I feel like we say NC State every year, but we'll see if it actually happens.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see here. And obviously, a couple things to wrap up here. Heisman Trophy winner, obviously Jalen Daniels last year off to the NFL. Who is the favorites right now? Who are you watching for the Heisman this year?
I mean, this is going to be a wide open race with Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers. Those are the favorites right now. Dylan Gabriel, he'll put up numbers at Oregon. I think he's going to have a monster year. Travis Hunter, the two-way star. I have no idea, honestly. I mean, Beck would be the easy answer, but this feels more wide open than any other year, where last year we were saying Caleb Williams and Drake May, and Jaden Daniels was at least mentioned. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. If I had to pick today, I would take the easy way out and say, Carson Beck or Jalen Milroe, the team quarterback that carries his team through the SEC, because it's going to be brutal to get through it. But that's my answers for now. But that'll change every week.
Yeah, that'll be sure here. And the last thing is, obviously, you mentioned the top here. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how the non-conference schedules sort of change over the years. Now, once this playoff becomes more in vogue and people realize what it takes to get in and what doesn't here. But I still think we have some intriguing games on tap early in the season. What are some of your non-conference games that you're excited to watch before you get into the meat of conference play?
I mean, there's like I said, there's ones in week 1 are fun. Florida, Miami, that's always a fun game. Dating back to when I was a kid. Michigan, Texas is obvious. That's going to be huge. In Ann Arbor, have Texas come in there. That was really close to being a national championship game last year. And anytime you have those brands hooking up, the game will be fun. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, definitely looking forward to that one. So, yeah, there's plenty of them. And Georgia, Clemson early, Wisconsin, Alabama going to Wisconsin. So, like I said, then you have the opportunity to see some of these games again in the college football playoff.
Yeah, I also, the way I see it now, I think the way you put up, I think it's pretty accurate. I would think maybe in the future you're going to see maybe one big non-conference game on your schedule and probably a couple of cupcakes to go with the rest of your league schedule if you're these 14 Super Leagues are here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely coming. I don't know what the next step in that is and how the realignment wheels start turning from there. I do know that the ACC with Florida State and Clemson, with those outstanding lawsuits against the conference, things can change quickly. But we'll see. I think a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. Like I said, it's a one-of-a-kind season. There's never been one like this in the 155 years of college football. And I'm, like I said, mixed feelings about a lot of those changes. But at the end of the day, when they kick it off, I know I'm going to be super excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's exciting to see all these games kick off in a few weeks, Bill. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. People want to follow on social media. Keep up with your college football coverage. How can they do that?
Yeah, I'm at Bill Bender 92 at sportingnews.com. And just get ready for another season, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I think I've been at it here at Sporting News for 12, 13 years on the college football beat, and we'll get after it.
Yeah, definitely a very unique year to be covering the sport, Bill. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.